let's wait a minute. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. We will join prayer right after this, okay?
So as disgusting and vile as it is, this is not something that should really be all that surprising. And I guarantee you, if Charlie Kirk was still with us, he'd be the first to tell you he's not surprised at all, especially considering that he almost prophetically tried to warn us about this very culture on the left wing months ago. But if you go online right now, and if you even look at some of the more subtle but still pretty open statements on the mainstream media, even coming out of certain Democratic politicians, needless to say, a huge facet of the left wing is currently celebrating the tragic and untimely death of Charlie Kirk. And if you just go on Reddit or TikTok right now, you'll see this all over the place. I'll show you some of the examples just to, demonstrate that they exist. I don't want to promote these people. I want to make it totally clear to YouTube and all guidelines here that we're playing this merely for the commentary and reaction purpose of showing you what others are saying. We 100% condemn all violence, all threats of violence. These people are vile. But yes, it is worth pointing out this is what a ton of left-wingers are saying right now online in reaction to the death of Charlie Kirk.
I'm not saying she deserved it, but I'm saying God's timing is always right.
There are a lot of people that are like, no matter what side of politics you're on, you should never celebrate something bad happening to someone. I, on the other hand, do cheer when bad things happen to bad people.
Charlie Kirk just got... Well, breaking folks, seems somebody just took a shot at one of the Fantafast's favorite 5-mile-wide mouthpieces, Charles Chuckle Kirk.
Now again, if you're at all shocked or surprised to find out that there's a bunch of people in our country who have severe mental issues that somehow always seems to correlate with left-wing politics, but that's a discussion for a different day, you shouldn't be. Because if you've been paying attention to sort of left-wing circles, the kinds of social theories that come out of them, as Charlie Kirk here, again, way months ago, on April 7th, 2025, pointed out and tried to warn all of us about, he pointed out the following, saying, quote, assassination culture is spreading on the left. 48% of liberals. 48%. Not really a fringe group of people here. Said it would be at least somewhat justified to assassinate Elon Musk. 55% said the same thing about Donald Trump. So I don't want anyone to see me playing a bunch of these videos or showing you a bunch of what they're saying and somehow try to make the case that, oh, that's just a couple of lunatics and they exist in the world. Absolutely they do. You're talking about half of the liberal electorate feels this way, according to polls. It is okay, it is morally justified to take shots and try to assassinate your political opponents. In California, activists are naming ballot measures after Luigi Mangione. The left is being whipped into a violent frenzy. Any setback, whether it's losing an election or losing a court case, in their eyes justifies a maximally violent response. And yes, indeed, I'm going to point this out in a second as well, but this is the natural outgrowth of left-wing protest culture tolerating violence and mayhem for years on end. The cowardice of local prosecutors and school officials have turned the left into a ticking time bomb. Again, April 7th, 2025. How sad and how tragic that Charlie Kirk's prediction here indeed did come true. And as I pointed out, we still don't even know necessarily the exact motivations of the shooter or who the person was, because I believe we're now getting reports that the initial guy who was arrested was not the shooter and the person is still on the loose. Total failure, by the way, of Utah law enforcement, but that's a subject for a different day. We're going to do a bunch of videos on this subject, so don't you worry, we're going to address that as well. But as I point out here, it's an undeniable fact that an attitude of violence is widespread on the left. Because again, as I believe I said in the first video on this subject, it's not just one random isolated case that's like a freak of one situation. No. Every single time leftists do not get their way or something happens that they don't like, they immediately rush to riot in the streets, burn things down. This is not the first assassination attempt, nor is this the first act of violence we've seen on a college campus in protest of someone they essentially don't like being there. And it's very pertinent to take a listen to some of the justifications, some of the types of arguments they'll make that show you how mainstream the attitude of violence or supporting or being okay with violence is on the political left. Because you'll often hear these things, right? Either blood or resistance or whatever is needed for liberation. You know, when you look at some of the leftist and even official BLM activists talking about the murder of Irina Zarutska, for instance, you will hear this type of rhetoric. Here's another one they so often say, right? Oppressed people have a right to resist their oppression. Have you heard a leftist say that? You probably have if you paid attention. Of course, the question there ought to be, then what exactly does that look like? What does the resistance mean? Well, they'll justify anything for it. You even hear a lot of justifications for October 7th and other situations for that very reason, BLM riots, etc., etc. And it shows you essentially what the left-wing mental framework here is. As I pointed out lastly, right? You're violating my human rights, therefore violence is okay. Because they exist in this paradigm where essentially if you disagree with them even slightly on any minor issue, that's not just a pure issue of ideological difference. They will say, you are against my right to exist, or you're violating my human rights, you don't believe in my human rights, right? They say these things, that is a true fact. And so in their mind, that justifies, and again, this attitude is extremely mainstream among left-wing activists. I don't want to pretend like it's some small issue. That justifies, or it makes okay, or it makes a defensible certain act of violence because, oh, we're just resisting oppression in basically every single case. Combine that with the fact that among the Reddit crowd, there are high levels of mental derangement and sickness and a bunch of other issues, and you get this huge hermaphroditic morgue of a bunch of people in this country, whether that's this situation and the people celebrating it, or the constant rioting in Portland and Seattle and other places, where there's just a huge swath of people who have convinced themselves it is morally okay to commit any act of violence simply because people disagree with me, and therefore that violates my human rights. And this literally is the mainstream left-wing framework, frankly, at this point. And when we talk specifically about the Democratic Party, the big criticism I've had of them for years, and I said the same exact time when their own voters started rioting outside the DNC in 2024, is that instead of condemning these people, instead of pushing back, they for a long time have essentially downplayed and turned a blind eye to the growing violent, yes, violent radicalism on their own side. Why is that? Because most of the time, as you can see, for instance, from today, the targets are usually right-wing. They're going after Trump. They're basically like this crazy paramilitary organization on our behalf that can run around like the Little Red Book supporters or the SA or something like that, right? And act as the terror group so that way their political opposition feels afraid to speak out. But here's the thing, you're going to hear at least some Democrats go out today and try to say that, oh, political violence has no place in this country, we totally condemn it. However, there is a very real problem in the sense that not only will they not push away or condemn these violent radicals, in many cases, they're actually getting closer. There's more of a connection to the people in the streets, the people on TikTok, and the people in DC than you may so far, or they may claim to be the case. And there's many examples. Again, we're going to do several videos. We've got to talk about J.B. Pritzker's comments, Tim Walz's comments, MSNBC, many other reactions. But I just want to start here reacting to some breaking news where, again, right, Democrats nationwide are saying, no, we condemn acts of violence, we condemn political violence. But take a look to what just unfolded in the U.S. House of Representatives, where House Democrats objected to a request for prayer after the apparent assassination of Charlie Kirk. And they didn't just object in terms of not joining along in silent prayer. They're actively screeching and screaming and trying to shut down the room. Jasmine Crockett, by the way, her voice can be pretty explicitly heard in parts of this video. And, that just shows you, frankly, everything you need to know and everything about what the Democrat Party really stands for. They're going to try to take this moderate veneer, pretending they don't have anything to do with these left-wing radicals because they put out a statement on Twitter. But the moment, nationwide, by the way, in front of everyone, that, okay, you condemn political violence, we condemn political violence, let's all have a prayer for the guy who was just assassinated as a result of political violence. And look at how House Democrats, led by Hakeem Jeffries, reacted.
The chair would ask that all members present in the chamber and those in the gallery please rise for a moment of prayer for Charlie Kirk and his family. The gentlelady from Colorado, rise. Let's, wait a minute. The House will be in order. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. Shh. The House will be in order. We will join prayer right after this, okay? The chair lays before the House a communication. The House will be in order. Thank you all.
Yeah, so as you can clearly hear there, Jasmine Crockett, the classy individual that she is, unable to keep her mouth shut, her loud mouth shut for even just 2 seconds while people are trying to do a prayer for the target here of a political assassination. Worth noting as well, the Democrat Party was perfectly willing and able to stay silent back when they were doing this ridiculous protest for George Floyd. But we know what the difference is there. And this, again, further undercuts the arguments about the supposed separation between the activists and the politicians. Because while Jasmine Crockett today did put out a statement condemning political violence and saying what happened to Charlie Kirk is unacceptable, while she's in the chamber, she's just acting like a freaking lunatic and can't act classy, can't just, be relatively sane for 2 seconds there, right? So there's your Democrat Party. And as I said, as I hinted at, we have a lot more to talk about, way more examples of this, but I just wanted to briefly show you what has happened today in the House of Representatives. I want to very briefly close with this message because I am seeing some comments online that, people are really angry, and I understand it, and I'm angry as well. But I just want everyone to remember that retaliation is not the answer. Violent retaliation is not the answer, and it will not go well for us if that's the path that the right wing decides to take. Not just because it's the ungodly thing to do, but it's ultimately a counterproductive thing to do as well on top of that, right? What essentially you'll see happen, as basically is exactly what went down on January 6th, right? Is the left wing does not operate on the same standards as we do. So they can spend an entire summer burning down half the country. The moment the right wing does something, it's like, oh, see, this is it. Let's throw hundreds of people in jail. Let's expand the national security state. Let's debank a bunch of people, ban a bunch of people, all of these things. And why is that? Because very often violence can be used as a justification for further action. And frankly, the left currently is sounding like they're kind of scared of that. But I just want people to keep that in mind and remember that, okay? It will not take us anywhere or not benefit us anywhere for people on our side to just go out and do crazy things because they're mad and they're upset, right? We have the presidency. We have power in this country. We need reform. We need to increase security at these types of things. And yes, I do think Charlie Kirk would not want people to just go inside and be silent, right? We need to speak out more. That's what he would want. He would want his peacefully his message to carry on here. But just remember that, guys. Remember that random acts of, crazy stuff, not the answer. It's not going to end well for you. It's ultimately a selfish act that's going to damage everyone else on the right wing who is trying to actually advance the ball forward, not just do something impulsive. Just remember that message. Just keep it in mind, okay? Totally condemn. Do not do it. Be angry, yes. Speak out, yes. Don't stoop to their level. not just for moral reasons, although there are plenty of moral reasons, but it's also not the practical thing to do. Okay, it's not going to benefit us. It's not going to move anything anywhere. It's actually just going to make things worse for us. So just remember that. All right, that said, guys, let me know your thoughts on this in the comment section down below. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe. And until next time, God bless, prayers, rest in peace, Charlie Kirk, and peace.